All right, guys, happy Monday. We will get this show on the road. So today's update might sound a little bit like the last few weeks because it seems like things are similar to the last few weeks. We've got um, kind of a weird jobs report on Friday last week that we're going to talk about. We've got a little bit of conflicting information out of the Middle East. Are we heading towards a ceasefire or not? That seems to be consistent. And we've got oil prices kind of drifting a little bit higher. We'll jump into that. Got a couple loan program things we want to talk about. We've got a marketing idea I wanted to share and see what people's feedback is, and then we'll get on our way with the week. So I'm going to share my screen, and I just wanted to kind of spend a little bit of time going over what normally would be really, really big news, which is last week's jobs report. And the jobs report, or what they call non-farm payrolls, came in actually way hotter than expected last week. It showed that 178,000 jobs were created, which was about three times the estimates of 60,000. So let me ask you guys this. Does anyone on the call place a high likelihood of confidence in that jobs report number? Okay. Or do you view it with a little bit of skepticism?
Skepticism.
Okay. Probably a lot of skepticism, right? Um, and I think the market probably viewed it the same way because the jobs reports, and gosh, this is going back, this isn't a Trump thing or a Biden thing. This has been pretty consistent for a number of years now, where the jobs reports have been vastly overstated. And it's probably long past time for the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Department of Labor to make some adjustments into how they compile these numbers because they've been pretty inaccurate. I think in 2025, the number for the year was over 1 million jobs that were overstated from the headline number. Um, and what's even more interesting is in February, it showed that there was 92,000 jobs lost, and they revised it again worse, and another 13,000 jobs were lost in February. So hard to put a lot of weight into reports where, 1 month you show a big loss, way worse than expectations, and then 1 month you see a big gain. So I think the
Foxy.
market. Let me see if I can get this person muted, guys. Give me 1 second here. You can see who that is. Aaron, can you see who it is? I don't hear him talking again, but
I don't see him.
okay, we'll keep moving on, and hopefully they've self-corrected it. Okay. Um, So I think the market has taken it in more or less the same way, which is, the market has also kind of shrugged it off and isn't putting a lot of weight into that. So, normally the monthly jobs report is a massive, massive market mover, but for the past 2 or 3 years, as it's become more and more inaccurate, I think the market is just kind of shrugging its shoulders and saying that, they don't really expect it. Um, the U6 number down here, if you're following along, so that's people that are underemployed and or are not working full time, or maybe they're working a second job. And so the unemployment rate on the headline number went down from 4.4 to 4.3, mainly because of a shrinking labor force. But the U6 number, which is really kind of more the reality of like what's it like in the economy overall, that actually ticked up from 7.9 to 8%. That's always going to be higher than the headline number, but that's getting to a point where it's getting elevated. If you remember last year, unemployment was trending close to 4% for a lot of the year, and it's ticked up a little bit here, and this number has ticked up a little bit as well. So I think that combined with higher energy cost, oil cost, that's going to trickle into the economy. That's going to put a crimp on people's finances. Um, Okay, so let's look at the charts. So the last few weeks, we have started the week positive. Typically, news over the weekend might lead the bond market to rally, and then later in the week, things have sold off. And so, like this week here, 2 weeks ago, a couple good days at the beginning of the week, big sell off into the week. Um, uh, 2 weeks ago, the week of 30th, we had a good day on Monday, kind of weaker throughout the week. Last week, we started off positive, and we really only had one day that wasn't great, which happened to be Friday. So, kind of a similar theme that the bond market's hoping things get better. It's hoping the war's coming to an end. It's hoping that oil prices are going to finally start coming back down. And then when it doesn't, the end of the week, things tend to trail off a little bit. And so that trend continued last week, but to a lesser degree, which I think is a good sign. Um, there was a lot of talk really early this morning and overnight of a potential 45-day ceasefire in Iran to kind of negotiate terms of like a longer term, into the conflict. Um, it seems like the Iranians have come back and said not so fast, and so that seems to be the trend, right? That there's talks of a ceasefire, then there's not, then there's talks, then there's not, and so the volatility we've seen in the market, where we've had just massive day-to-day swings like we had in here, all these days are just compare this like the prior 2 months, like this is called a candlestick. So the size of the candlestick indicates how much the market moved within that day, either up or down. And from January through the end of February, there were a couple days where you had market movements that were anything meaningful. And then look here, like almost every single day since the end of February, beginning of March, since the conflict started, you've seen big intraday movements. And so that's probably going to continue. Although the last couple of days of last week, you really only had 2 of the 5 days last week where there was big intraday market movements. And so the market's kind of anticipating things winding down. That's what we need to see, happening. Um, but it hasn't happened just yet. I mean, just this morning, oil has ticked up over 110 a barrel. Um, it's a little bit surprising to see the bond market up 7 basis points in the face of that. But if you guys have been on these calls with us for a while, we talk a lot about that the market reacts to what they think is going to happen, not necessarily what's happening today. So oil prices are going up based upon things that are happening in real time, like lack of oil getting out of the Middle East through the Strait of Hormuz. The bond market is reacting to what they think will happen, which is why you're having the two of them today moving in different directions. Um, but again, that can flip flop, and I think the volatility, is likely to continue. Um, we talked about this last week, and I think it's probably going to be something that will get more and more attention over the next 30, 60, 90 days. So if let's look at the life cycle of oil, right? So it gets like drilled out of the ground, then it gets refined into a usable product, then it gets shipped somewhere, and then, it gets used to fuel trucks, and then those trucks move, goods and services across the country, and then they show up at Walmart, and then we buy it from Walmart. And, so that cycle, could be months long from the day that it's shipping out of the Middle East until it directly impacts goods and services we buy. And so there's a lot of talk, and I think you're going to continue hearing it. So it's good for us to be prepared for it, that inflation's going to increase, and it's going to increase over the next few months based upon what happens today and what happened in the last 30 days. Um, and I think the reason why you're hearing from the United States side trying to put kind of an end to this conflict is, um, and if you guys have been on this with us, we talk about it like, what do politicians really want? Like both parties, Republican and Democrat, what's their number one concern? Somebody tell me, like, what is the politician's number one concern? Whatever party it is. Anybody know?
Get
Real
reelected.
reelection.
Getting reelected. Good. I'm glad we are all equally skeptical of them. Staying in power, Sharon, is probably actually a better way to put it, because that's really what they're looking for. So when are the midterm elections? They're in November. When do average Americans really start paying attention? Probably 30 to 60 days before that, in a midterm year, not in a presidential year, but in a midterm year. People that watch Fox or MSNBC 5 nights a week are probably paying a little bit more attention to it. But the average American, like the middle of the road person that doesn't pay a lot of attention to politics, that their vote is probably what swings it to the right or to the left, that person's not really paying attention until maybe 2 months out, right? So If the elections are in November, that's September, maybe August. I think someone posted in here August, like that's when they're going to pay attention. So inflation will affect us for the next 90 days or so based upon what's happening with oil today. The president, like all politicians, wants to keep his party in power so he can keep his agenda moving forward. That means that he really needs to have this done like this month, like by the 1st of May. Because if it's done by the 1st of May, we'll see an inflation uptick most likely in April, May, June. But July and August, as we get on the other side of it, inflation will come back down, and then he'll have a positive message to send. Like, we won the war in Iran, the oil spike is over, and oil's coming down, inflation's coming down. That's a great political talking point. So I think the next 30 days are really, really important for the president. And, obviously that's who's pulling the strings in this case, right? So I would imagine that you're going to see lots of push from the U.S. side on negotiations trying to end it. There was some post over the weekend from the president, kind of like very strongly worded, basically saying we're going to bomb the bleep out of you if we don't get a ceasefire. Like that's because he wants this over. Because if it's over in the next 2 weeks, oil slowly comes down, the inflation spike hits us, and then it starts coming back down, and by the fall, when people are paying attention, right, inflation's moving in the right direction, and that's a good political selling point. So that's what I think is going to happen. Um, but it'll be really interesting to watch over the next week. If this drags on longer and inflation's higher, and um, the Republicans lose the midterms, you can only imagine what Democrats are going to do for the next 2 years. They're probably not going to make Donald Trump's life easy, right? They're going to go after him for everything they can. So I think there's a lot of motivation for this to be wrapped up pretty soon, and for a multitude of reasons, that would be a good thing, right? In particular, how it would affect oil and inflation and interest rates and the real estate market, in the summer. Some of the national statistics like mortgage applications and pending home sales, haven't seen that spring summer buying season bump that they typically do. And I think some of that is kind of Iran war related, whether that's personal uneasiness that, we've talked about people that are uneasy that have kind of backed out of buying, or just, financial, strain because of higher gas prices or inflation ticking up. And so this is a really big important in month, both for politically, looking ahead 6 months, but also to get this wrapped up and having energy cost and oil and inflation tick back down. So but it'll be a bumpy ride like it has been, I think, for the next few weeks until something's resolved. um, Okay. Um, so on the economic calendar this week, so last week we had the monthly jobs report. That was a big number. Over the next few weeks, we're going to start getting some inflation reports, and those inflation reports will be for the month of March. March is when gas prices started ticking up. And so we've got to take a really close eye on those this week. Thursday and Friday, we have two big ones, and it's odd that they're back to back, but the PCE, the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, comes out Thursday. CPI, which is another big inflation measure, comes out Friday. Those are both the March numbers. Really important for us to watch. I'm guessing that they're going to come in hotter than expectations. How that affects interest rates is kind of depending upon how bad it is. Like a 0.1% uptick, the market probably shrugs it off. It probably doesn't negatively impact mortgage rates. But if it's like a 0.2 or 0.3% uptick and you get inflation pushing close to 3% again, that's when it gets a little bit scary. And that's when you could see an impact on mortgage rates. So I would expect a lot of volatility at the end of the week. There's the Fed meetings minutes also get released this week on Wednesday. That's probably going to have no impact on the market at all because nobody cares what Chairman Powell says right now. Everybody cares what's happening with overseas and energy costs. But normally that would be a massive market mover. Here, let me share my screen real quick. If you guys are in front of a computer and just want to screen grab this. So this is the economic calendar of the week, but we've got a Fed meeting here on Wednesday. and then these two big inflation reports, this on Thursday and then here on Friday. Okay, so this came up last week, and it's a Florida program, but the context of it, I think, would benefit all of us in multiple states. So in Florida, there's a program called Hometown Heroes. It's a really good first-time homebuyer down payment assistance program. And I say good because there's more flexible rules. You can make more money to qualify for that program. So Hometown Heroes is out of money in Florida. That ran out a week or two ago. There might be a little bit of money that trickles in here and there for the next few weeks, but for the most part, that program is over until the state funds it again. Um, and we had a customer that we were working with been working with for a couple years now, who's a teacher, and she was going to do the Hometown Heroes program, and kind of the Iran war kind of spooked her a little bit, so she kind of backed off. And now the money's gone, right? And so the question is like, okay, what does she do now? So I want to walk you all through all of the options that are available for people that want to buy a house with little money down. So, um, certainly you've got VA loans for veterans. And I'll share a quick story with you. So I had this client, his name was Patrick. This is going back like 15 years. And we were trying to do a jumbo loan without a lot of money down. And we just couldn't figure out how to make it work. Like jumbo with 5% down doesn't really, or 10% down doesn't really exist. And I remember just randomly saying, "Have you ever been in the military?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Have you ever used your VA loan?" "No." And I think, and this guy was like a highly ranking, really IT guy, makes good money. Um, and it was just a reminder that I've carried with me, and most loan officers on our team have probably had a similar experience for the past 15 years, that you never know someone is eligible for VA until you ask, and sometimes it might surprise you. And there's people that are 60 years old that have never used their VA eligibility because they have a misconception about it, whether that's the costs are too high, or sellers don't like it, or you have to be a first-time home buyer, or things like that. I saw something on LinkedIn the other day, and it was from Loan Depot. If you guys know who they are, huge national mortgage company. And someone from Loan Depot posted that they just closed the biggest VA loan in company history, and it was $6.5 million dollars on an $8 million like luxury penthouse townhouse, and I think in Boston somewhere. Um, and most people don't realize that VA doesn't have a maximum loan amount, and they typically allow 100% financing up to really, really big sale prices. So VA is something that we should all kind of incorporate into our process. One thing that we should ask every customer that we work with is, have you ever served in the military? And then let them give you that information. So if I have someone who's putting down 50%, we still ask if they've ever served in the military. Why is that? Because sometimes VA has a better interest rate than conventional. And if the person has any disability rating, they don't have to pay the VA funding fee, which is the one negative. So I think VA is very underutilized, and we've all probably had clients that took out some other kind of mortgage when they were eligible for VA
Welcome
because
to better than a brand new home.
so just as part of your process, guys, ask every customer we work with, have you ever been in the military? Because that's a big deal, and there's people that might qualify for that didn't think so. VA just about 2 weeks ago announced some changes to their appraisal processes. Some of it doesn't affect every state, like some states require radon gas testing and some don't. But generally speaking, VA just came out with some appraisal guidelines that change that will make things easier. Um, if you've ever had a client who owned a house with a shed in the backyard, I'm talking like the metal sheds you can buy at Home Depot for $1,000 and you stick your lawnmower in there. Um, VA used to like inspect those and require repairs to a shed. And it's like, come on, this thing has no value. What are we doing here? But that was a VA requirement. So that's going away. So VA is getting easier is kind of the big picture. But I think when we talk about no money down, that's underutilized. Certainly in some markets, you have USDA loans for rural properties. Um, every state has a multitude of first-time homebuyer programs. Um, and here's what the program I wanted to talk to you guys about today. So how much do you have to put down to get an FHA mortgage? Does anybody know? So what's the minimum down payment?
3.5.
3.5.
Okay. Does everyone agree it's 3.5?
Yes.
Not with Chinook or Essex.
Okay, there you go. Nice job, Abby Green. You can get your mortgage license. Okay, so the answer, guys, is no money down. Technically. So $100,000 house, 3.5% down is $3,500. You're financing 96,500. That's the standard FHA loan that everybody answer the same 3.5%, right? So there are two programs, Essex and Chenoa, that will actually do 100% financing on an FHA mortgage. It's done with a first mortgage and a second mortgage that's repayable for the 3.5%. You can actually finance 101.5% technically on that, but 100% financing is available for FHA without a first home homebuyer requirement and without an income cap. And most of those down payment assistance programs have both an income cap and a first home homebuyer requirement. So um, the customer that we mentioned that this Hometown Heroes program that's perfect for her that's now gone. She makes too much money, most likely for some of the down payment assistance programs. We can still do an FHA mortgage with 100% financing. So just keep that in mind. I think, first time home buyers are sometimes like veterans unaware of what programs are available. And that's something that we have access to. And honestly, most lenders do, but I don't think a lot of lenders talk a lot about it. Um, Sharon, your question here. So the rate on the second is 2% above the first mortgage rate. So if the first mortgage is 6.5, the second mortgage is 8.5. Um, Figure the payment on that's going to be $100 or $200 a month, somewhere in that range is kind of where it typically lands. It's a 10-year loan. Um, so the difference between like a down payment assistance program where you get, let's say, $10,000 and there's no payment on that $10,000 and you just pay that down payment assistance when you sell the house. These other programs, Essex and Chenoa, there is a monthly payment. It's amortized over 10 years. So they all have a repayment function, but sometimes it's repaid interest only. So 100 to 200 bucks a month, depending upon the sale price, is kind of where it typically falls. But I wanted to mention that because I think when people either make too much money for down payment assistance, or maybe they're not both first time home buyers, or like the program they went, like the one in Florida, runs out of money, that deflates people, right? And we have to be kind of the voice of positivity, like, hey guys, there's other options. Both that we might not have asked them about and or we might not have told them about. Okay, the last thing I've got, and I'm curious to get some feedback, and feel free to chat this or unmute and tell us what you think. So I've seen this Facebook ad about home buyer education, like Zoom meetings, like a consumer direct type of play. And I kind of sat through in my car ride yesterday, listened to this hour and a half long thing. And it's kind of been a thing that I've heard of for years, but haven't implemented. And I don't know many people that have. But so one thing we're looking to start doing is some like after hours, like 6 to 8 o'clock on a weeknight after work, home buyer education. And I think you could go a couple different ways with that. It could be geared towards first time home buyers. It could be geared towards move up buyers. It could be geared towards investors. And you could do one a month and cycle it through. But um, I bring it up today because I think it's a partnership thing where it's most effective. Like if lender and realtor are putting something on like that together and kind of hitting both of their databases with it, but also getting it on social media because you're trying to drive people to attend that might not already be in like your funnel, like your sales follow-up process. Anyway, I just bring it up because it's something that I think is interesting. Some of us around the office here have talked about doing things like that. And if you guys have any interest in that, just get with whoever you work with on our team and we'll chat more about it. But I feel like, we talk a lot about like technology and what are people, looking for. And what they're looking for is information. I had this client that called me the other day and he had been approved by Better and Rocket and was trying to buy a house with 5% down, contingent upon selling his current home. And these other lenders told him that it was contingent upon like selling his current house. And I pre-approved him and basically told him the same thing. Like, you can't buy unless you have sold your existing house. And so he makes an offer and the seller doesn't take it because they don't want a contingency. And the seller's like, we love you. We love your price. We love your terms. We can't do the contingency. And so ultimately what we did, and you guys have sat through, things we've done for the last, year or two, where we talk about like buy before you sell options. You guys hear us use that term all the time. And so I was like, well, we got a buy before you sell option that you could do. You could still try to sell your house, and if your house sells, you can still sell your house first and use the cash for the down payment. But we do have some buy before you sell options, that that could work. And so had the realtor said you went to Rocket and Better, they both told you no without a contingency, like that deal would have died, right? And the realtor connected them to us. And so everybody in our team would have done the same thing that we did, which is, hey, we have other options and we've got him under contract now. And he's got a 60-day contract, non-contingent. He's still going to try to sell his house. And if his house sells, that's what we want. But we have the ability to buy before he sells. And so I bring that up because a lot of people are going online and getting some information, but not all of it. And so I think like what separates like anyone here on this call from the internet lender or internet realtor, that maybe isn't as experienced and doesn't have like the vast knowledge that all of us have to kind of figure out how to make deals work. And it's information. And so I think, that term information marketing is really powerful. And so I think that's something that could be a really, really good kind of marketing opportunity, get in front of some people and create value and differentiate yourself. So anyway, if you guys have any interest in putting on things like that with us, we're just kind of starting to put some ideas together, but get with whoever you work with on our team, because I do think that's something that we're going to look to in some capacity start implementing here in the next, 30 or 60 or so days. Jen Fanning, good share with you as well. I think $500 a month is a good budget, for that. Like if you put $500 into ads, that'll fill some seats up and get some conversations going. So, okay, guys. Well, it's right at 10:30. Appreciate you jumping on today. Have a great day. Have a great week. Big market moving week, especially Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if you want to chat about that marketing idea with us, just reach out to whoever you work with on our team directly, and we will start a conversation. Thanks, everybody. Good day.